So you said he's gonna.
Yeah. So Arch is going to. I think Arch is actually going to. Wait, are we live?
Oh, we're live.
Okay.
We're live.
Let's get it going.
Yeah. All right. Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. Sorry I was a little late. That is my B. Please come in and we're gonna talk with Hudson Standish of 247 Sports. Get carried away with the offline talk. So as you come in, you guys know what to do. Take an attendance, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, help support us as we continue to grow the platform. Hudson, welcome back, man. Big weekend for you. A lot of work going on.
Yeah, a little bit of a stressful weekend with the Arch Manning official visit. Omaha starts tomorrow. As somebody just mentioned in the chat, Drake dropping tonight. So busy Thursday. But we had such good feedback from last week's collab that we decided to run it back. And we're probably going to be running it back for the foreseeable future. Maybe not on a weekly basis, but as much as we can.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, lots of great feedback. And, those of you who tuned into part 1 and part 2, I'll have those links in the bottom below if you missed that conversation where we really went across the spectrum of Texas football, present and as well as into recruiting. So still a very good, relevant conversation to check out. Part 1 and part 2, both here on Fanatic Perspective and on Horns 247. Hudson, before we get into what I want to talk about with you, I want to just give a quick shout out to our sponsor, BUSR, BUSR.com/Fanatic, the official sportsbook, the official betting partner of Fanatic Perspective. We got game 6 tonight of the NBA Finals. Tons and tons of action going on tonight. I have Warriors in 7. I'm sticking with that, so I'm probably going to I'm taking Boston tonight. But overall, tons of action on BUSR, as well as college baseball this weekend. We got the Texas Longhorns. My man gave me smoke in the comments section, Hudson, because I really did want to give my man Hispanic Titanic, Ivan Melendez some love, and we didn't get to it, even though I had his face up on the screen. So we want to give a shout out to the guy that should be, the college baseball player of the year, win every award. But talk to me just real quick. Let's touch on baseball and show them some love real quick as they head into the College World Series, facing off against Notre Dame tomorrow night.
Yeah, Steven. I mean, I think that was maybe the only negative comment that we got. Like, hey, why did little Ivan Melendez talk? He set the BB-Core home run record, which is just like the modern bats that they use, the aluminum bats. So one of the greatest seasons in college baseball history. He's more than likely going to win the Golden Spikes. And Texas baseball battled back from a Game 1 deficit against East Carolina after losing Game 1. Stormed back during Game 2 and ended up taking the Greenville Super Regional. Tomorrow against Notre Dame, it's going to be interesting. They're built differently than a lot of teams that we've played. A lot of college baseball is so lineup heavy, but Notre Dame is really built with their pitching staff. So it's just going to be more of how Texas lineup can handle seeing probably 4 or 5 pitchers tomorrow. And if they can kind of blitz Notre Dame and maybe, Pete Hansen can throw another gem of a game in Omaha. Steven, another kind of thing, and I talked with Jeff Howe from Horns 247 on our own Talking Texas Baseball podcast on our feed about it a little bit. And something that I think is really interesting when you're looking at this game is kind of the fact that Texas has been here with this group. Like Notre Dame, this is their first College World Series appearance, I believe, in 20 years. They're really talented. They just took down number 1 Tennessee, a team that was absolutely crushing it in the SEC. I think best ever SEC regular season. But the difference,
and they were talking like it too.
Yeah, and they were talking like it too, exactly. But the difference is Texas, more than any other team in this field in Omaha, has actually been there, has actually done it. And I think that could be an edge tomorrow. And then I'm sure you were going to mention this too, but I'll just go ahead and say it. no matter what happens, you get one of your two biggest rivals in the next game.
It's crazy. Those of you who are either there in Omaha or heading to Omaha tomorrow, it is, just a minefield, it feels like, of rivals, Arkansas and OU and A&M. Don't get arrested. That's my advice.
Yeah.
Don't get arrested, because I know how people can get carried away. I think it's going to be a really fun, super competitive environment. We know how intense, playoff baseball gets, College World Series baseball gets, but don't do something stupid and end up on Twitter for the wrong reasons, and you're out here being the main character when you shouldn't be. So let's keep it about the players, and I'm excited because I can't wait to hear the stories from folks that are there. I'm excited to see how our pitching staff does. You mentioned Pete Hansen, Gordon. We got a tremendous effort from Stevens, who's been much maligned this year. So those guys, that experience you talked about, came through big time against East Carolina, when East Carolina thought they thought they were moving on at home, and they have that patience and that sense to calm themselves and either get that hit or get that out and advance. So as tough as this season has been with injuries and different things of that sort, here's David Pierce's group right here back in the College World Series. And that leads to the other thing that we want to give a shout out to before we get into the recruiting weekend, because I know you guys have a lot of questions for Hudson, and I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity, with everything bouncing around recruiting wise. I want to give a shout out to Chris Del Conte and this entire Texas athletic department for winning their second consecutive or back-to-back Directors Cup, which grades all of the sports that UT is involved with across, all of D1 sports, beating out Stanford. Stanford has been, like the gold tier amongst men and women's sports. And for Texas to go back-to-back in this climate with Chris Del Conte and the hires we know he's made across men and women's sports, Hudson, just speak to that and this achievement for the Texas Athletic Department.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And it is a testament to just how they've kind of leveled up this athletic department, both on the men's and women's side. I mean, just the national championships are obviously great. That's the goal for every single program at the University of Texas. But more than that, it's just the fact that, okay, if you're not winning a natty, basically almost every other program at Texas is getting top 10, top 15-ish, marks. Like, that's the crazy thing to me, is just that, okay, it looked like softball was going to have, at the beginning of the season, it looked like softball was going to have the worst women's sports year, of any of the programs. Then they ended up getting to the Women's College World Series finals. Like, I mean, it's just crazy the amount of depth and consistency that basically every other part of the Texas athletic department has. I mean, it's wild. And Stephen, before we move on to recruiting too, I have one more baseball thing I want to throw at you.
Please. No, they deserve their flowers. Please, go ahead.
So I'm not sure how much of the Greenville Super Regional you watched, but I was talking with Jeff about this, and this is kind of crazy to me. When you look at the Texas lineup, there is like truly maybe only one weak link right now, if that. And that's just Silas Ardoin, our catcher, who is so elite on the defensive side. Maybe wasn't putting together the best offensive approach at the plate, but then in the final game, he got a solo home run to kind of get him going. But when you look at it, Texas is 6'3" batter. So at 6, you have Skyler Messenger, who's arguably one of the guys that I feel the most confident at the plate. He's batting .375 on the year.
Super hot right now.
Spray chart everywhere. Like, he can hit the ball wherever. Not only homers with double digits on the year, but like he can hit it everywhere. At 7, you have Silas. At 8, you have Dylan Campbell, who was arguably the MVP of Game 2, and Trey Faltini, who hit a bomb in Game 3 and had the hit in Game 2 that kind of got it going. So it's not just that, okay, Ivan Melendez is up, we have to pitch around him, but oh no, then we get Murphy Staley. It's this like snowball effect with this Texas lineup that if they stay hot, I legitimately think they are the best 1 through 9 in college baseball.
That's why, to me, with first off, I want to give a shout out to Dylan Campbell and his family. They're amazing, and got to hang out with them after the Big 12 championship game. Amazing crew. So I was actually watching that. I was in New York this weekend for Tribeca Film Festival, and I was watching at the airport in LaGuardia, and like by myself, just like screaming up and down for Texas when Dylan Campbell hit the game winner, hit the walk off, and just seeing his talent level and what he will become is insane. But you also have that mix of those young, talented guys, but you also have guys that are veterans like Ivan and EK, and just like you said, these Austin Todd, these guys that have been here, been at this level. I think Texas's bullpen, and depending on, like you said, you're going up against a stout pitching staff in Notre Dame, and Texas's strength has been their lineup, has been their bats. When their bats get rolling, they can overwhelm you like they did to East Carolina in Game 3. They can get themselves out of bad situations like they did in Game 2. But to me, that support system for our starters is going to be key there with our bullpen. I don't feel as strong about our bullpen as I did with the group last year per se. But if the bats keep going the way they're going, they bring that with that big game experience to Omaha that a lot of other teams don't have. Texas has as good a chance as anybody to come home with the title. So it's very, very exciting, man. Very, very exciting. Who said we only got 29 likes? Hit the like button, guys. Hit the like button. You already know what it is. Hit the like button. We outside right now. Happy hour time. So you were telling me, Art shows up tomorrow, and it's
I show up tonight, honestly.
Tonight, okay.
It just depends on when they decide to head in.
So right now you have an article. You actually have like the last 2 articles because things have just been hot right now, and I know you, Mike, Jeff, everybody's just working crazy. But right now you had the article about more of his like decision timeline. So you guys go to 247. Check that out and read up on Hudson's latest thoughts there. But I mean, let's start with the main man, Arch Manning, and just everything that encompasses. I said honestly is the gravity of the visit, man, because I look at the people who are also on the visit list that are big time would be headliners other weekends, quite frankly. And I look at what the momentum from what happens with Arch leads to with everybody else, all the other guys that are outstanding. Some of these guys have already been mentioned here in the chat. Just talk to me, and just in terms of just the overall situation heading into this weekend.
So I'll give a positive and a negative to start off the discussion. So the positive is Texas has hosted 4 official visitors so far this year. Spencer Shannon, the most recent commit of the 2023 class, a tight end from Mater Dei High School, the juggernaut out in California. Leona Leifau from Kahuku, Hawaii, who Texas really crushed that visit. And in a recruitment that a lot of people on the West Coast kind of thought Texas was the like pity school of like, oh yeah, Texas is going to get an offer, but this is down to Utah and Oregon. Not the case. They also hosted Cedric Baxter Jr., one of the biggest recruits in the country, the number 2 running back in the nation, who everything we've heard is that they've just absolutely made a massive move there. Plus, Stephen, on a midweek, they hosted Colton Vosick, the elite Austin Westlake edge, who I'll be honest, Texas was coming like they were fighting from behind in that recruitment, but absolutely crushed the OV. Hosting him on a midweek to where the entire staff got to focus their energy on him was just absolutely amazing. So Texas is 4 for 4 on really good official visits. Heading into an Arch Manning weekend, the staff kind of has the juice right now. There's a good, like, 7 to 8 group of guys that are going to be there, which is kind of the perfect amount for an official visit. You have enough to where it feels like it's, a party. It's a little bit of a vibe. There are people there, but it's not overwhelming to the point to where you have to worry about people potentially getting left out. And when Arch Manning's on campus, that is something you have to worry about, because he almost has that planetary pull to where people just kind of orbit around him, even if it's not intentionally. The little bit of the negative is, I think a lot of Texas fans think that this is a little bit of a formality for Arch. Like, oh, he's going to take his official visit to Texas, and then he's going to commit next week at the Manning Passing Academy. No, Texas does have to prove to Arch some things, and he was honest with Mike, and we mentioned this on our podcast this morning, which hasn't dropped yet. It'll drop tomorrow, but Mike was on it. Like, Arch was like, look, the last official visit, I'm going to Texas, and I'm going to make them answer the uncomfortable questions. Like, this is not just some formality. I'm taking another visit, and then I'm going to make my call. Like, no, the Texas has to crush this visit, or else, he could very much well end up at Georgia. So that's kind of a positive and a negative. Texas's recruiting staff, hot as hell. Negative, I guess, is just that kind of resetting, I guess, where some fans are kind of thinking. And if you're not thinking that as a fan, then good. It's just all about what we're hearing after the visit.
So in terms of those uncomfortable questions, what do you think what does that mean? What is that more in terms of development? Did he elaborate at all in terms of what he's looking to see, or is it, are they pretty close to the vest there?
Steven, Arch is going to keep things close to the vest when it comes to stuff like that. As much as, as much of a great kid as he is, he's going to keep that close to the vest. What I think it's going to be is just kind of the elephant in the room with Texas football. You know it too, Steven. If you were an elite recruiter, if you were advising an elite recruit, what you have to ask is, what's been the problem here? And sure, maybe people have talked about it before, but, in reality, it's, why was it 5-7 last year, and how are you going to prove to me that if I commit before the season, it's not going to be the same old story? And from what we kind of hear, I think Steve Sarkisian has a really good answer to that question, and I think can kind of pitch to Arch, look, we're going to prove it to you regardless. If we don't, we know you're not coming here. We're going to prove it to you regardless. Go ahead and hop in the boat. Let's create some recruiting momentum and make a run at the number one, or the, a top 3 class in the country.
I'm really excited to see just, some of the feedback in comparison to the visit in Athens. Cause I've been hearing a lot of different things out of that visit, and I have people that follow this channel that are Georgia fans, and some of the stuff may be hyperbole or just some of the connections that are there, some of that same type of Southern type feel that he gets from the school, as well as them being the reigning national champions. Can you tell me, because I think one of the things that, if it's down to us in Georgia, it really comes down to, why is Texas a better school for Georgia, better school for Arch Manning than Georgia is for Arch Manning? Can you talk to anything about that Georgia visit that is validated, or, why do they feel like they're in good position?
I think Georgia's been in a good position for the jump. Basically what we've heard, and, this is the tough thing about covering Arch Manning, Steven, is just that it's like, it's kind of the same as it's always been. Like, there's nothing super radical that any school's going to do. Like, I'm sure you know this, but sometimes you hear kind of silly stuff of like how schools end up getting kids on visits, to where it was like, oh, they actually told me that I could play 9 technique, even though every other school knows that I'm a 3 technique. Like, there's nothing wild that Texas could do, or that Georgia did, that now has them in a certain position with Arch. The fact of the matter is, Texas is in the mix because they have the quarterback developmental pitch with Steve Sarkisian, and the fact that Arch just wants to kind of be a normal college kid, and Texas is the type of school that the Mannings or Arch himself would go if football wasn't even in the mix. I mean, there's a reason why Arch's sister, before getting into the University of Virginia at the last second, was about to go to Texas. So, like, that's the Texas positive. But Georgia, I mean, it's just simple. They're the national champions. They have the program stability that getting a guy like Arch Manning and plugging him in at quarterback in Todd Monken's system would just be a very solid, good choice for him. Now, obviously, there are some other things about the fact that Georgia's already won a national championship. So then does that kind of set the bar high for Arch? If he doesn't win a title there, what happens? Versus potentially getting Texas back on the national stage, or continuing what Quinn Ewers or maybe even Hudson Card does with Steve Sarkisian. So there are a lot of factors in play. But I think, to kind of get back to your main question and point, Georgia and Texas just have the best overall pitches when it came to college life, football fit scheme, and just kind of how they've played the recruitment the entire way. Like, I think that's why Texas and Georgia ended up being the final two, is because there was no switch up throughout the process for any of them. Like, Alabama had some things switch up on them as far as kind of pitches. LSU had to deal with the Brian Kelly entering.
Yeah.
I mean, Ole Miss, that was always a funny one when people would mention Ole Miss, because that was kind of an easy way to tell if they weren't following the recruitment, or if they didn't know anything. It's like, yeah, but that's where his granddad and Eli went. And it's like, well, probably not the biggest fans of Lane Kiffin coaching their kid, even though Lane is a brilliant offensive mind. So
the thing too, I think that excites me about Arch, because I think I've tried to be real about it, and some people appreciate that, and some people want me to drink the Kool-Aid and blow all the smoke, right? But in reality, I've been consistent in saying I think he's an elite 5-star quarterback prospect that has the most ridiculous pedigree as a third-generational athlete that we've probably ever seen. And so for all of those reasons, it makes sense why he's in the position he's in, and why he has the leverage he has, and why there's a gravity situation here. It makes sense when you factor in the networking that's been done with other guys in the 2023 class that he wants to play with, or wants to influence their recruitment. So all those things make sense to me. Where I'm getting more excited, just the videos and the practices, and I know you guys at 247 have actually been out there in New Orleans and seeing it. I like his physical development. Mm-hmm. Both Eli and Peyton were big quarterbacks, right? And in Eli's case, a good 6'4", 225, 230. Peyton's case, 6'5", 235, 240. Big guys, right? And you're seeing that same type of physical presence from Arch in terms of his development. I can see it in his shoulders. And I think that'll only lead to, the arm talent as well. And just having a little bit more zip on the football. And I'm excited to see how he looks physically as a senior in high school, and seeing all those things. That excites me for the prospect itself. And I think one of the other things I have questions about, in terms of this group coming in with him this weekend, like we were talking about Petaway and some of the other guys, who, like, right now, where's your head at with some of these other folks in terms of why this weekend for them? Is it strategic, or is that just how schedules kind of fell? Because there's some big names coming in, and we'll go over those here in a sec.
Yeah, so there were some where it was just like, oh, this is you're coming in on the Arch Manning visit, that works best for you. Like, it's just an accident. Like my guy Hunter Osborne out of Hewitt-Trussville in Alabama. Steven, you might be familiar.
That's Finkley's guy.
I was about to say, you might be familiar with his former high school teammate, Justice Finkley. Hunter was somebody that I kind of identified early last year before he picked up a ton of offers. Now he's going to be deciding between Clemson, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas. Like, absolutely loaded final decision for him. But that was one where that just made the most sense for him to pick this weekend. But you can bet that with top 50 wide receiver Jaquez Petaway, with Temple athlete Mikael Harrison Pilot, who likely will play wide receiver at least to start at the next level, just because that's what he wants to do. Even though I don't know if you've watched his tape, Stephen, but I think he's going to be a better safety at the next level. But those two especially are big time. Hey, Jonte Cook isn't here. Hey, Ryan Niblett, our 2023 commit, that's a wide receiver at Aldine Eisenhower. He's not here this weekend. But here are two guys that you could legit play with that are elite prospects. Not even mentioning the fact that Arch is bringing in his high school teammate, Will Randall, a tight end, who, Stephen, I'll be honest, I'm probably going to prep an article and put in a crystal ball pick for him to end up at Texas tonight.
Oh, really? I mean, did I lose you, Hudson? May have lost him for a sec.
Still good.
Hey, I think I lost you for a sec.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Apologies for those.
Yeah, you said Will Randall and how much he loves Texas.
Yeah, and it's
Arch's
just
teammate.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where Will Randall is a take at Texas. He's not a take at Georgia. I don't believe Georgia ever offered him. So for Will Randall, it's Texas, I believe, Tulane or Virginia, which, with respect to those two institutions, it's not the toughest pick. And whether it happens this weekend or not, I don't know. But I do think that is a pretty safe bet for him to end up at Texas. And he's coming on the visit with Arch there. I believe Will's last visit was for the spring game when they visited separately, which was a really smart move on the Texas staff's part, because it does matter. Obviously, it's not even probably a top 5 factor in Arch's decision, but having the comfort of his high school teammate with him would matter. And bringing Will to the spring game by himself, showing that, hey, we valued you even without Arch.
Right.
Exactly. That was just a really smart move. So those are 3 kind of in the orbit. I have a article with up-to-the-date notes on all 3 that I think I posted as soon as we joined, just because I figured we'd end up talking about it. But hilarious comment.
Absolute alpha B.
Yeah, I'm out. Bye. But yeah, I'll probably put that in tonight, and then we'll have an article up in the morning. I think Mike will do the same thing too.
Bet. So we have how many receivers are we taking in this class? So we have Niblett.
Or more than likely 5 if it's the right group of 5. So you have Ryan Niblett in the boat already, who I believe at 247, we personally have him as like a top 60-ish player in the country. Steven, I know that we've talked about this before, and I think I saw Kieran in the chat earlier too, and Kieran knows this. Like, Ryan Niblett's a 10.5 sprinter. Absolute freaky speed, exactly what Sark wants. And he raised the floor for this wide receiver group so much, because obviously we're pursuing Jonte Cook, or Texas is pursuing Jonte Cook. Him and Jaquez Petaway are the top 2 targets. So that is what it is. But grabbing a top 60 guy as the floor setter, and then you're able to go after Cook, you're able to go after Petaway. Jonah Wilson from the Houston area at Spring Decaney is another target. Brennan Marion, I think we've talked about this before, Stephen. Brennan Marion is not as positionless as Sark is at wide receiver. Brennan does want a true X. And I think that's why when he got the job, they really wanted to look at some bigger bodies, because I think he looked at the film, realized that there are a lot of situations where, you would only go press and against Texas, and they just kind of couldn't get off of it. So that's why your Isaiah Nayors, your Ajay Halls kind of got into the mix. And with Jonah Wilson, that's the same type of look. So those four are four I'm looking. And then there's an entirely entire potential wave of momentum if Arch got on board. Like there's probably 2 or 3 guys that we're monitoring of, hey, if Arch gets on board, there's a good chance this receiver that Texas isn't really in on it is going to try to visit. So 5 if it's an elite group of 5, 4 more than likely.
It's interesting to say that about Brennan's preference about X. And right now, guys, I have Petaway's film up, just some of his huddle highlights, who will be here this weekend. And just because these guys, like this isn't guy, like, isn't he 10-5 as well?
Oh, Petaway,
similar.
Petaway went 10, I think his best. He went in the 10-3s and he went sub 21 in the 200.
Yeesh.
Like crazy.
Yeah, so yeah. I mean, and these are guys, I mean, Petaway I like because he plays a very diverse offense where he's running a lot of stuff inside out and just all in myriad of ways. These are the type of receivers I saw up and down to Alabama that Steve Sarkisian featured left and right. So I look at some of these guys and it fits the profile. This group and how they look, I do think you will see some of that, diversity, if you will, in terms of the skill sets. But a lot of these guys, kick returners, just the versatility that they bring to the table, very impressive to me. So it's just really, really, really fascinating with this group. Just wanted to share that because I personally think you're right. I think 4, possibly 5, especially the numbers getting right from where we've had misses in the past, being up on some of those numbers. I think that's interesting as well. Did somebody bring up? I want to get into the comments here. If you see any comments you want to address for anybody here, guys, please get your questions out for Hudson.
Real quick, too, like Texas can be flexible with how many wide receivers they take. Like I can't see a possibility where they take 6, but if you'll just humor me, like if it was the most elite of the elite group, like they only took 2 receivers last year, and Brennan Thompson, who has been looking really good. He had a little bit of a slow start at first, but has been really turning it up lately. And then they also took Savion Red, who is kind of a hybridish player. I could see either fitting at running back or wide receiver. So when you really think about it, Texas does kind of sneaky have a lot of flexibility with how many wide receivers they want to take. I just, at the end of the day, think that 5 is the safest number if they get Arch, or just keep it at 4. But I don't know, man. Also, the NCAA kind of dropped a bomb with the lack of limits anymore. So you can kind of take as many as you want. Like there's a chance they might take 3 tight ends now is kind of what we're hearing.
Jeez. I have another question for you. So my guys, I want to go over to the defensive side of the ball because there's some really intriguing. I know we talked earlier about Hunter Osborne, but some of the other guys that are in this visit group. We haven't talked about Malik Muhammad yet from South Oak Cliff. And I'm big on SOC guys, and what they've done, win the state championship, and just the crazy amount of talent they have over there. Kieran's really been somebody who's really helped me understand the amount of talent SOC has over there and just a lot of the ties that coaches have with Duncanville. But we know Muhammad's relationship, obviously, to Texas A&M. Is there any chance of, he's one of the better corners in this class?
You got me.
Any chance there?
I lost you for a split second, but on Malik Muhammad, Texas is trying to make that ground that Texas A&M and Alabama kind of got out to. It's interesting. I kind of do think that I kind of do think that they're making a push. I'm just not sure around the horn. Buy or sell, I would probably be selling.
Yeah.
And I would think that he'd probably still end up at Texas A&M or Alabama before he ended up at UT. But that's why you have the visits, you know, like that's why you're bringing them in to make up some ground and everything.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many kids over there too, and I also think about it. Kids talk, the influence, and having a good visit still means something. And even from a portal mechanism, if we're really playing the long game
For
of
sure.
that relationship aspect, right? Steve Sarkisian talked about that at the last signing day press conference. Of if you finish second or third, you still have that. My phone is still here, right? That relationship is still there. So I just feel as though
it's not like that would ever happen with like a number one recruit in the country or anything who would, like, it's not like, come on. It's not like that matters. Yeah. Quinn Ewers testament to that.
Right. Keep, you don't, I mean, not to say, nobody's tampering or anything. Let's also be clear about that for the rivals out there that are in the chat and saying, oh, y'all were over here recruiting people, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying relationships matter.
Yeah.
And you can still come off genuine and put forth. Muhammad's one of the best players in the country. So if I have an opportunity to show him why he belongs in my program and show some of that development, why not? Now, there's some other surprising names. So we have Roll.
I got one more thing for you real quick on Sock.
Oh, go ahead.
So, I'm sure you know this, and Kieran and I have talked about this, but South Oak Cliff is my favorite program in the state right now. Elite coaching staff, just everything they do is so progressive and smart with how they run that program. And they're just really good coaches. They have great kids. I did want a little bit of a tease that there's going to be at least one another Sock visit next week on another, because next week is the true, like, Arch's. This week is kind of Arch's visit plus a couple others. Next week there's going to be probably 15 plus official visitors. So there should be another Sock Golden Bear in attendance, if not multiple, next weekend. So fun little tease. But yeah, Raul Aguirre or Aguirre from Georgia, big time linebacker.
How's Texas getting in there? Because I thought he was a Bama guy. Or am I tripping?
I think he's still a Bama lean. I reported that the other day, but this is Stephen, what we kind of talked about. This is the Tashard choice factor of just being able to get a guy like this on campus. And I want to be clear, Jeff Choate is crushing it this cycle in recruiting. As long as he's doing extremely well on the trail. And I know after the 2022 cycle, there was some heat on him, and he just responded by crushing it with a lot of personal relationships. So obviously, Texas fans are going to judge him to see if he can split one of Anthony Hill or Darian Gillette. Also, real quick, kind of thoughts and prayers to Darian Gillette. He had a pretty significant knee injury that's probably going to cost him his senior season.
Oh, no.
That was announced, I believe, earlier today. So that's kind of been a little bit of a bummer on the day. And Darian's such a good kid too. I just hate it, but hopefully he attacks the rehab, and by basketball season or when it's time to early enroll, he's ready to go.
Well, the good thing is he's young. He's very, very young,
Mm-hmm.
and we all know when you tear it early and you have those issues early, you're still growing. I'm not a doctor by any sort, but I know it's easier to recover at a young age. Than say if you're in the NFL or as you get older. It sucks too, because our last video, we got a lot of questions about a lot of people very excited about him. Some people like him more than Anthony Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And, just an incredible prospect. So prayers up in his recovery. As you said, that was announced today.
Yeah, it was reported today, and he kind of confirmed it where one of his old coaches, Charles Hitchens, who's a really good recruiting coordinator out in the Central Texas area, kind of put out a quote tweet about it, and Darian responded just with, thank you, coach. And a lot of people were sending him their wishes, which, again, it's an absolute shame because he's a great kid, and it stinks that the end of his recruiting process kind of now has this dark cloud of he's having to attack rehab and recovery as well. But
so I want to go back to something you said about Jeff Choate and the staff. And I think this needs to be emphasized a little bit more. The recruiting prowess that you're seeing in terms of where these coaches have coached and the regions that they've been in, I think we're starting to see some of the fruits of those things. Tashard Choice is an amazing recruiter. We already knew that coming in, but the regions he's getting us into, the PK and Jeff Choate over on the West Coast. When I hear a linebacker from Hawaii is interested in our school, those people, and let's include Sark in that too, because the Ray Malalugas and all these dudes of the world, I don't know if Ray, I don't think Ray was from Hawaii, but like the Samoan, those type of guys used to be USC, Washington, Oregon type locks. Like they weren't really getting past Utah, like that area. Like those guys would stay in that area. And you started seeing guys go to like Tennessee, Alabama, and some other schools. Yeah. So the Texas getting in the mix, that tells me those guys have some ties over there, because that's the area that they recruited for so many years and have so many connections there. Brennan Marion bring all over the place. I mean, at this point, Brennan Marion is probably a national name and brand with how much he works the circuit, these camps, how personable he is, not just with kids, but with these high school coaches. Can you speak to just the build of how this Texas staff is structured in terms of their recruiting approach?
Yeah. So obviously, I guess what I'd say is different is that from last year, it's just people have enjoyed when we talk kind of real or everything. I think sometimes people are too buttoned up. It is what it is. Andre Coleman was not a very good recruiter. He was a wide receivers recruiter. Your wide receivers recruiter needs to be a plus add, if not plus add in his own recruiting department, and then adding stuff in other factors. And Stan Drayton was absolutely an elite recruiter, but Stephen, you know this, Stan Drayton, awesome coach, elite recruiter, only focused on running backs. He did not care about Raul Aguirre or whoever. And so that's kind of what's different with Choice and Marion, with those two specifically. Choice is recruiting the two best running backs in the country at an elite level right now in Reuben Owens and Cedric Baxter. And he's chipping in Georgia and Florida and giving Texas kind of a hold in a region that I would say, even Texas high school football, everybody wants Texas high school football kids. But there's also a difference in you kind of have to play it a certain way in Texas. You can't come in Texas and just try to grab a bunch of kids from Sauk without meeting the coaches. But Georgia and Florida, it's kind of a little bit of a free-for-all with the nation's best programs. So Tashard Choice gives that instant credibility to where we can recruit the number 2 running back in the country from Orlando, Florida, who's considering, Alabama, Miami, Florida, A&M. And he gives Texas that instant credibility. And so that's the difference there, plus his ability to recruit other positions. And Marion's kind of the same thing, to where, there were some doubts about Marion, not from me or Mike, but some other people in the media of, oh, he's just all substance. He's just all flash. And then he goes out and grabs Ryan Niblett after, again, Ryan Niblett dropped a top 7 that included Kansas, Texas Tech, and U of H, but not Texas, 2 months before Brennan Marion got on the job or whatever. That's the type of guys that those two are on the recruiting trail. That's been a plus add. But Stephen, I want to mention this to you, and I think you'll find this interesting. I think the reason that this staff is having so much success on official visits, on unofficial visits, and just getting kind of better at the whole recruiting thing is because they were thrown into the fire with the post-COVID recruiting. They kind of got burned a little bit. And this year, they made sure that they got everybody on a bunch of unofficials. They found out what they liked. They found out what they didn't like. They tailored the recruiting approaches to them. And not only do they have a full year kind of as a staff and they've added 2 absolute studs, but what's happened is they've actually gotten the kids on campus before their official visits, which is what happened in the 2022 class. Like, for example, mentioning Leona Leifau. Leona Leifau is from Hawaii, but this was, I believe, his second return trip to Austin. Like, you're not having to have these first impressions with these kids on their official visit and having to close recruitments. No, you can just go and close a Spencer Shannon because you've seen him at his high school multiple times and you've seen him in the facility before. So you can kind of tailor that approach.
I love that aspect of the point, because I think that's something that many of us who, if you're not seeing the day-to-day and the impact of pre-COVID, during COVID, and kind of what is happening now post, those are things where we just look at, as fans, we just look at the recruiting rankings, like, why did we get this? Why did, and not factoring in a lot of those, relational type things. So I think that's a phenomenal point, and something we have to continue to keep in mind, and establishing that area of comfort, because at the end of the day, especially if you're coming from Hawaii, you want it to feel like home. Not just like, oh, I love the coaches, or I have a good relationship with Jeff Choate, or I have a good relationship with PK or whatever, but like, Austin's cool. Like, I feel like I have a vibe for Austin. I feel like I have a good sense for this football team, and I feel comfortable here. That's something to where, when you have people committing over Zoom a couple years ago and stuff, and not take, like, that's another reason why the portal is what it is right now, if we're being honest. So there's some questions here in the chat that I want to get to you. I'm going to start with my man, Peter. He said, how's Texas doing with Jalen Hale?
That's a tough one to read. I think that Texas is in the mix more than some people think, but the team that has the most buzz right now is Georgia. I saw that Jonte said today that him and Jalen Hale are going to play together in college. Steven, you kind of know my position on package deals. Like, everybody's going to find the best fit for them regardless. Like, it's fun to say that, and maybe they will, but
sounds good on the IG story.
Yeah, and it's fun. And Jonte is an absolute master at, kind of staying in the media with just by being himself. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't see that being like a, oh, dang, I wanted to go to Texas, but Jalen Hale's going to Georgia. I guess I got it. No, like, we'll see. But
has OU lost steam there? I felt like at one point they were, or is that not the case?
So when Lincoln was there, they were to the point to where they might have not been able to take Hale because they just had so many elite dudes committed. Lincoln left, and Oklahoma kind of fell off. They're still in the mix. Texas A&M is still in the mix, but right now he just got up an official, so that could definitely color some of this. But I hear Georgia a lot for Hale right now.
Okay. Let's see. We also have a question here about Javian Taviano from Arlington Martin.
I mean, I hear a ton of Georgia there. I hear a ton of Texas A&M there. He's had Texas consistently in the mix always, but, we don't hear them as much. But, again, they've been crushing official visits, and will eventually take one to Texas. So it's just time. I've mentioned this before, Steven. I don't know. This is extremely lofty praise, but Javian Toviano has the same personality and like demeanor of Bijan Robinson. Like, he is that good of a kid. He is that football focused. He treats everybody with respect. Like, probably my favorite, if not my personal number one player in the state. Texas is going to have to really battle there. I know that he's mentioned before that he feels like Steve Sarkisian is up there when it comes to personal relationships he has with head coaches. So that's a factor that Texas kind of has in their cap. But will it be enough to supplement or to surpass Georgia's proven track record of putting guys in the league, especially after the draft they just had?
Right.
Tough.
And that's another element there too, is the relationship that you have with this staffing. You see yourself, ability to stay in state, and that's where we get dinged. We don't have the skins on the wall from an NFL standpoint. And the people you're going against are, Georgia has, 15 plus picks and setting records for NFL draft picks, and whole secondary is getting drafted. And the guys that are there right now, the scouting community is very high on those guys. So those are things that we have to, from a development standpoint with the guys that are currently at Texas right now, they got to maximize people like Jahdae Barron, people like Keaton Crawford, some of these younger guys. If they can get anything, that last bit of talent and juice and production out of Anthony Cook. And all of those things buy you credibility as a staff moving forward for these younger guys. Because to your point, when you're making such a serious life decision as these young men are going to be making, there's no way you're not looking at what they're producing and what the schools aren't producing. So we have to keep in mind, especially when looking at searches in Georgia, right? There's a strength, but there's also, in-state relationship, ability to play sooner. So there's different factors there as well. But I feel as though, if we can straighten that out and start winning some games, hopefully some of these kids get to see the ones that don't commit, say before their high school season begins, and they get to see Texas in action. And, we have a product that shows promise, and obviously, things are going in the right direction. I think we could have a lot of momentum build up, late fall before signing day. So it's interesting, man. It's an emotional game too, as you see down there in the trenches going through it.
Stephen, I've said this a ton. So I do kind of give myself a little bit of credit. Patting yourself on the back is annoying, but super early on in the process, I was one of the first recruiting analysts that was like, look, as it stands right now, Texas, with the current state's number one overall player, DJ Hicks, there's not much there. Sorry, it kind of is what it is. And, he took a recent visit to Texas and seemed to have a good time. But from what we're hearing, it's still that same trend line, Stephen, right? Of Texas is kind of just not in that top group. But why I'm laughing and why I say that and I'm bringing it up is because the only thing working in Texas' advantage there is that he has said a ton, just over and over again, he is not getting off of his timeline committing at the Under Armour All-American game in January. So Texas can actually jumpstart themselves in this recruitment if they have a fire 2022 season, look really good on the field, and then make some momentum that way. So you are right that there's a certain group of elite guys to where Texas actually could get back in the mix with a good season. But I guess what I would warn fans, what I would warn fans is that kids don't have this checklist of, okay, Texas is 9-3, their offense is top 15. No, it's more of a feel thing. If Texas got to a Big 12 title game, or if they, really hung close with Alabama and a bunch of kids were on an official visit, or even if they upset the world and shocked Bama when kids, those are the type of things that makes people think, okay, Texas is having a good season. Let's bump them up and start considering them a little bit more. I'd say that there's probably a half dozen to a dozen kids like that who, if they saw something from Texas on the field that was really impressive, they'd kind of increase their seriousness in the Horns.
It's funny because we're coming full circle here in terms of this conversation. We touched on at the beginning, and I'll mention it again. Texas winning the Directors' Cup for the second consecutive year for the Texas Athletic Department, and how enormous an achievement that is, especially for one, Chris Del Conte, and just everything that he's done since coming on board after just really since probably the Lost Odds, like just been up and down, and somebody that came in, I like Del Conte, and I'm going to say this because he came in with we got that business approach that we wanted, that we thought we were going to get from Steve Patterson, but it's actually in a practical manner and relevant to college athletics, and just his commitment and tenacity across all sports, from facilities and not trying to be cheap, but actually leveraging Texas's resources and understanding truly how to fundraise. Significant part of the job, and getting the coaches what they need and hiring qualified coaches. I say all that because this clearly puts, and we talked about this in our very, very first conversation, Hudson, and this leads to your point about recruiting and some of these kids that are not going to be committing to until Under Armour All-American game or U.S. Army All-American game, those kids that really want that spotlight, right after the season and things of that sort. He has to win. He has to win, and he has to have some success, or at least, and when I say win, I'm not saying, 12-0 or 11-1. I'm saying showing signs and building and developing, and we are competitive and we're competing for a Big 12 championship. Everybody else across this landscape, for us to win the Directors' Cup and go 5-7 in football, that's pressure on these guys to get it together quick, because there's really no other excuse at the school, in my opinion, when you really look at what everybody else is able to do in their sport. And I understand NIL is different in college football, and transfer portal, and all these things are different and unique to college football and how it functions, and the amount of people you have in your program. These programs are enormous. But in order for Chris Del Conte to really feel fully validated, football still has to come along. And that's something that the recruits are also looking for, that type of validation, because there's so many kids that have not come to Texas that wanted to come to Texas because they don't trust Texas. It's as simple as that. And so just having those building blocks there this year to reestablish that trust, I think is going to, goes a long way. I really, really do.
For sure. I wanted to get to a couple of comments that I saw. There was one about, is Texas recruiting an offensive lineman from Odessa? So Harris Sewell, who's a 4-star in the 2023 class, Texas was recruiting him. He decided not to take an official visit to Texas. So Texas is out of that one. I think that's going to be Clemson. But A&M factors in that one as well. And then I saw one more about Jaden Chapman from Killeen Harker Heights, who's a big offensive tackle target that Texas is going after. Probably the most likely O-line 1 target on the board. I think Texas looks really good there. And that's one of those ones where they're going to have to win a head-to-head with Texas A&M and Oklahoma to get his services, in addition to the fact that he has a committable offer to Alabama as well. But Steven, that's one of those ones that Kyle Flood kind of nailed. He was Chapman's first ever offer. He brought him to a Texas game, and
nice.
I think Baylor was kind of slow playing him, and Kyle Flood was like, "Look, I see the vision. Let's go ahead and offer you. There are going to be a ton of schools that are going to hop in the mix now, so I just want to, make sure you remember I was first." But yeah, that. And Flood did that with a bunch of people in this 2023 cycle. Connor Stroh from Frisco Wakeland, Texas was the first offer. Andre Kojo, Texas first offer. There are a ton of guys that Kyle Flood evaluated early in the process that really hit. And now the fact that even though Alabama did offer Chapman, Texas looks really good there. Connor Stroh is a Texas A&M Aggie legacy, and that's going to be a tough part to beat. But Texas has kind of counteracted that with the fact that, Flood made such a priority of, hey, I know you don't have an offer yet, and you thought this visit was just to kind of, meet and have introductions. But no, I think that you're good enough to play at UT. So some good work from Kyle Flood on the 2023 recruiting trail.
Absolutely.
I mean, he needs to after that stinky 2022 class he had. I mean, good God. No, obviously kidding. Do not clip that. Those guys are elite. But yeah. Hey, I mean, shoot, we'll probably see a good group of those guys starting for Texas in the fall.
So just before we head out here, and guys, if you're in here, make sure you hit that like button. I really appreciate Hudson coming on, and just especially ahead of a big weekend, in terms of recruiting, and then for us as fans with Texas baseball going on, a lot going on. So just really appreciate you coming in, and please show your appreciation. Hit that like button, subscribe, the whole bit. Any tidbits right now, just with the kids, as they're going through strength and conditioning, any takeaways or anything that, or is it just kind of business as usual right now?
A little bit business as usual, but one that I saw in person when I was covering the recruiting weekend last week with big underclassmen group, Cam Williams looks fantastic. He looks like he's lost 30 to 40 pounds. He looks amazing. He was out there with Jamon Tapp, who was showing off the golds. Jamon looked great too physically. And then I checked in on Cam Williams, and the reports have just been basically coaches and various people on the Texas side of things just saying, look, looks good right now, kind of working through some things. We just can't wait until the pads get on.
I also love Cam's attitude. Cam's coming to play, man. And he is not. I like the fact that he's been fearless about, and that kind of gets validated with the work he's put on his body. Whether it's basketball season, just to me that's impressive coming in from high school and getting rid of the negative weight. And because we know even with his weight where he was, his movement was very impressive for a man his size. Very, very impressive. And so just seeing already the commitment to the body, and I've heard that from a couple guys. I mean, I've heard good things about, how Kelvin Banks looked coming in as well. So, these are the, that's the group that everybody, when we first get our first practice reports from you guys, that offensive line crew, those are going to be the ones that people are going to be, okay, what's DJ Campbell up to? What's and all those guys that we look for. So that's very encouraging to hear that about Cam Williams.
Yeah, and it's going to be a double-edged sword with people being glued to the practice reports because, look, I can't wait to get the info either too, but there is going to be a little bit of, hey, Devon Campbell looks great in practice, and then the second he makes his first mistake, it's going to be like, well, Hudson, you told me that he was dominating practice and was the best player in the history of the world. Why isn't he, taking on Anderson on a kickout? It's like,
look at Kieran. Hey, Kieran said book it. He's going top 10 2025. Oh, man. I love it. He's drinking the Duncanville Kool-Aid. I love it. Yeah, man. I really appreciate you coming on. And I know this was something I just was like, you know what? Let's do a little happy hour before things really kind of go full tilt, just previewing the weekend. Some really, really big names, along with Arch Manning being the big name. And best of luck to Texas baseball. And go whoop Notre Dame's ass. I'm here for it. So anything else you wanna promote, plug, whatever you got, Hudson, before we head out.
All right. So real quick, I do get it that obviously not everybody wants to subscribe to the fan sites, but I will just quick plug 60% off for an annual membership. It's like $350 a month when you do the math. Just give it a shot. It's fun. Me and Mike and the rest of the people over there at Horns 24/7 do a pretty good job. And it's fun to join the community and just kind of have that little bit of an extra element. I think I have 5 or 6 things up right now on the site talking Arch Manning and the rest of the visit weekend. And I don't know, Steven, that's going to be fun. So that's kind of the only thing. I get it if you can't right now, but just keep in mind for the future.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. I mean, the dream team y'all have over there in terms of coverage, and honestly, like when you guys, I see these guys in action. Whenever I get to be around them or in camps and whatnot, and the relationships that you guys form with these kids. So when you guys get information, it's genuine information, positive or negative for Texas, right? But in terms of reporting the news and being accurate with how guys are feeling, where families are, all of these things. Mike Roach has been one of the best in business for years, right? We know what Jeff brings to the table, and probably my favorite podcast in Longhorn Blitz, right? So like what you guys are doing, and now having you on board with the team and the connection you're making with a lot of these young guys, and just some of the anecdotes you have for even kids in 2025 class, 2024, which is, they had some killers over at camp last week.
Oh, yeah.
That's a reason to be on the site and just be up to date with you guys and what you're reporting on. So really appreciate what you guys are doing over there at Horns 247.
Yeah. Hell yeah, Steven. It's fun as always. I can't wait for our next chat. Hopefully in, 2-3 weeks, we can talk about the effects of a potential Arch commitment. But, until then, I'm just going to be on my phone constantly. Little riddled with some visit anxiety right now, won't lie. But
all right. Well, we're gonna sign off so we can talk about those text messages you just got from some recruiting inside stuff that we can't go public with yet. And and by the way, since game 6 about to tip off here in less than an hour, hit up busr.com, busr.com/fanatic, the official sportsbook, the official betting partner of Fanatic Perspective. Use that Sports 100 FP promo code. Take advantage. 100% free play match on all your initial deposits. I got the Celtics tonight. I have the Warriors in 7. I'm sticking with I had Warriors in 7 from jump, so I'm sticking with that. They'll win in Golden State. But I really believe, regardless of who you bet on tonight, do it with BUSR. Amazing customer service and amazing player prop bets. Guys, appreciate everybody tapping in, subscribing, liking the video. We appreciate you guys as always. Horns always up.
See you, Steven.
Take care, Hudson.